Welcome back to the What About Mom podcast, where we go beyond surface level advice and into the real, raw, and radical work of healing, evolving, and reclaiming your identity as a woman and a mother. I'm your host, Jessica London, doctor of physical therapy, pelvic floor specialist, mom to two, and founder of Your Postpartum PT and Wellness. This show is your space for bold conversations, practical tools, and powerful reminders that when mothers heal, so does the world. So whether you're rebuilding their strength, finding your voice, or rising into the woman and mother you're becoming, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. All right, Cait, I am so excited to have you on the podcast, What About Mom? Because I was thinking about all of the people that I wanted to bring on this podcast that was really going to just speak so much truth and so much life to women and mothers. And of course, I thought of you. So without further ado, welcome, Cait. I'm so excited to have you here.
Jess, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, amazing. So, if you're listening in, Cait, I worked with Cait one-on-one as a business coach and mentor, and it's just been such an amazing facilitation for me to really kind of sink into doing business a little bit different because as women and as mothers, we really cannot be doing business the same as maybe we did before having kids, or maybe the way that we learned it in a different way if we got different coaching from people who potentially weren't mothers. So I really wanted to kind of bring you on today to also talk about the deeper things behind making money as a woman, making money as a mother, business ownership as a mom. So I would love for us to just get to know you a little bit more so all of our mamas can learn about you and how you got started as a business owner yourself and then kind of got into business coaching specifically for mothers as well.
100%. So I actually started my business before I became a mom. So I started my business while I was living in Bali. And that, I mean, in and of itself is a whole story. So I first went to Bali, it was 10 years ago this year, which is wild. Um, and it was 8 years ago that I started my business. So after about a year and a half, 2 years of sort of sitting on the sidelines, feeling like, oh, I'm way too late to the party. When I first went to Bali and was just getting familiar with the online business world, I was sort of like, hang on a minute, I can just combine all of my skills, all of my passions, and like turn that into a brand and do this anywhere in the world. What is this even allowed? Because before that, Jess, I was working as a Spanish teacher, making $38,000 a year, commuting almost an hour each way, burning myself to the ground, and clinging to a job because I thought I had to, because that was the model of success that I had seen. I came from my background is in education. I have my master's in teaching. And I was just like, that's what you do. A good, hardworking educator who wants to help people works inside of a school, and that's what they do. And it became very clear to me after a couple of years that that was not a sustainable pathway for me. And so I left. I really leapt into the unknown. My whole thing. I went on to. I mean, I talk all the time about taking risks. I think entrepreneurship is so powerful for that. I did a TEDx on risk taking, and for me, really the initiation into creating a career from nothing was my first foray, my like PhD, if you will, on risk taking. I'm like, all right, see you later, health insurance, see you later, income. I'm going to Bali. I have no freaking plan. But with just the progression of my life and my story and eventually my company, which again, I moved to Bali in 2015. I went, ended up moving, met the guy that is now my baby daddy and my husband, my partner of over 10 years. And it was really one giant leap after another, leap of faith, not knowing, but just following that intuitive nudge that allowed me to be in a space to birth my business in 2017. And I started off my first release of my business, if you will. I called myself a radiant living coach. So I was really supporting women to step into their most radiant embodiment and just live their gifts out loud, be their full selves, take the bold risk, do the hard thing, and just freaking go for it. And it got a lot of traction right off the bat. And it was about 6 months later that a lot of my clients were like, how are you doing this as a business? And I sort of accidentally fell into business coaching. I am really, I feel like I say all the time, I'm kind of like a kite string for my clients. I work with, especially in Bali, I worked with a lot of like spiritual visionary women who couldn't necessarily like land the plane when it came to marketing or sales and, actual business acumen. And I just loved playing in that gap. It's something I really enjoyed. And that really just skyrocketed. So I scaled my business. I transitioned after about 6 months into doing all of that deeper inner work, but with a business coaching lens for women who were entrepreneurial. And that really took off. And I, scaled to six figures in under a year, multi six figures in a year and a half, got featured in Forbes, then a ton of other press, did my TED Talk 2019. And it was 2019 that we actually moved back, well, moved to back for me, for Toby, to the States, and then got pregnant in January 1st of 2020. And I will never forget Jess, like, peeing on that stick and being just so excited, so over the moon, and my very next thought, like, a day later being like, "Oh, shit. Like, I built the wrong business." I will never forget, like, crying on the phone to one of my business coaches being like, "I should have started an Amazon drop shipping company. I have a coaching business. This is a disaster." And just feeling like because I had no models at the time. The industry at that point, I didn't know of another woman running a seven-figure business. My business was not at seven figures at the time, but I did not know of another woman running a big business. I didn't see a pathway for what it would look like to do this juggle with young kids. And I was like, I know that I do not want to sacrifice my motherhood on the altar of my business, but I'm also an ambitious motherfucker. Like, I don't wanna let go of my
Totally.
financial goals. I don't wanna let go of my expression. Part of me comes alive when I'm coaching. And so
Mm.
it was just this like funky in between. And then anyway, ended up giving birth to my daughter, Ella, in October of 2020. And I'm actually so curious to hear what you think about this, but for me, there's obviously such a massive identity threshold going from maiden to mother, right? 0 to 1. That huge transition of like, wow, somebody literally depends on my body and physical presence all of the time for their survival and their thriving. And so in so many ways, that was a massive transition. But when Ella turned 1, I took a pregnancy test and found out I was pregnant with Jack, my first son. And it was actually his birth that completely cracked me open and rebirthed me from the inside out. I feel like I heard something like 0 to 1, one child is an accessory, two or more is a lifestyle. And I feel like that is just so freaking accurate. The way that having two kids and the way that that birth came about, it just completely reoriented me. And what I realized was that motherhood was no longer this like side conversation in my business coaching, brand. It was the conversation. And
Mhm.
so like our birds do, that birth and that experience and that threshold of a new layer of myself in motherhood really just cracked me wide open and brought about the inspiration to rebrand my entire company to The Millionaire Mother, and that was in 2023.
And that was after your second son, Jack, right?
After my second child, first son, yeah, but after my
Yeah.
second birth, yep.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, absolutely. That's so interesting because that's actually when I started my business as well after my second kiddo. And there
Wow.
is something there too, I think, of the testament of I'm trying to do this the way that I previously did it before. And it no longer feels in alignment, or it just is no longer working anymore, and something has to change. And that's
100%.
really where it sounds like for you, like shifting to really meeting mothers and talking and bringing more mothers in that journey and recognizing, like, yeah, you know what? We can be moms and we can be successful business owners. We can shoot for the stars. We can be ambitious and we can be present mothers. And I feel like there is just obviously, as you know, too, like with just social media these days, it's like this comparison of like you had all or nothing. And I think it's so important to talk about the gray area and also so important to say there's nothing wrong with the all or nothing, no matter which side you choose. But for those that want to talk more about the gray area, like it's about leaning into your intuition, as you mentioned, about really leaning into that next step that's gonna move you forward and bringing motherhood a part of the journey. So do you feel like when you started bringing motherhood a part of your business coaching programs and really serving this population, is that when things, like, really started to just click in and make sense for you, or what did you notice once you made that shift?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so back in 2021, I actually approached a colleague of mine and I suggested that we launch a program together called Million Dollar Mama. And that was because she was like another person that was having kids around the same time. And we just like struck up a friendship in the DMs. And I was like, hey, I really want to create this program. Do you want to run it together? And so I loved that, like, teaching that, leading that conversation, attracting women who wanted to become moms, that was really, like, feeding my soul, and then it was before I rebranded the whole company, but I was, I don't know, maybe 7 months postpartum with Jack. I was having so many of these conversations with moms, and I launched a program called Boss Mama that I ran by myself, and that was, like, a 6-week program. And then when that was over, I went through this, like, weird grief portal. I'm like, "Ah, I don't wanna just go back to talking about fucking content." Like, I wanna and marketing, even though I love content and marketing, but my soul was just like and I was also feeling the needs of our community. I was just like, "We do not want to just, like, shove motherhood into a corner, tuck it into our fucking pencil skirt, and get
Mm,
back to business. This is the business. The motherhood and business blend is the business." And
amen.
so I really just, like, sat with, "What does this want to be? What does this want to be?" And then I ended up rebranding my whole company in July of 2023 to The Millionaire Mother, and, I gotta tell you, it feels like now it feels like home, and I think that for anybody listening who's like, there are still elements of my old brand or elements of my old way of doing business that feel aligned, but it's not the whole thing. And you feel terrified, like, I was legitimately so scared to rebrand my business because I knew I had women in my audience who were quote unquote dream clients who were not moms, who didn't know if they wanted to become moms yet. And I knew I ran the risk of isolating them or making them feel like this wasn't the community for them anymore. Um, and what I've found is that when we are making a decision that is to please other people, but not following our soul, we're gonna burn out, we're gonna feel resentful, we're gonna end up avoiding it anyway, like doing some self-sabotaging thing to avoid it. Your business is so much healthier when you are following what is actually true and the most resonant for you. And, when I made that right before actually I rebranded the company, I made the decision. I've never done this before in my entire career to close down a year-long container early. I issued over $100,000 of refunds,
Wow.
and I was just like, "You know what? I am taking a step back, and I just know that I need to create the white space in order to let the new thing emerge and be born." And it was about 6 weeks after closing down. And by the way, that offer had generated millions of dollars in my community. It was my primary thing. I was the breadwinner, postpartum mom of 2 kids. Like, it sounds glamorous on a podcast interview, Jess, but, like, I was fucking terrified. I was like,
Yeah.
"I don't know what's coming next. All I know is that I am being reborn." And I think, I say this all the time, like, thank God, people like you doing the postpartum, PT work, and there's so many other fields. We're starting to normalize the way in which our bodies change irrevocably in childbirth, postpartum, but there wasn't at the time a lot of language around how, as entrepreneurial mothers, our bodies of work also change. And for me, giving the space to really let myself feel how my body of work wanted to change and what it needed at this stage in season, what my body of work wanted something different. And letting myself rebirth my company in that way was, again, it brought up all my fears, but I just think that mothers, when we trust that deeper thing that's wanting to come through us and get very much like the birth portal in and of itself,
Mhm.
our work is getting out of the way and letting that come through. And when we do that, what's waiting for us on the other side, my experience of this is exponentially better than anything that we could have planned for ourselves.
Oh my gosh, that just gives me chills. I mean, obviously, to put myself in your shoes where I'm like refunding $100,000 because you feel so in alignment and so in your truth to go a specific way. Like, have you always been like that, Kate? Or what did you do to really develop this self-trust, this self-led intuitive spirit to do the bold, hard thing? Because I think a lot of moms might be listening and it's so easy to be like, "Oh, that's easy for her," or like, "Maybe she can do that," but
Oh, no, it
I
was fucking
can't.
terrifying. It was so
So
scary.
terrifying, let's just be real. It's freaking terrifying to do hard things.
And I think there's this illusion of like, oh, once you become a millionaire, like you don't feel pain. You just like, have all you're just like wiping your nose with $100 bills. And it's like, that is just not the case. Like we have, we lead this beautiful life and do all these things and have this like beautiful house in Maine. But like, there's expense and upkeep and all of the stuff to, make that happen. And I very much felt that pressure. And I very much was like, Kate, are you just being so stupid? Like, don't rock the boat. You know how to make money. You know people resonate with this message. Just like do that and don't rock the boat.
Hey, quick thing while I have you here. If you are a postpartum mom who got cleared at 6 weeks but still feels totally unsure of what to do next, you are so not alone. We have helped over 650 pregnant and postpartum moms eliminate leakage, prolapse symptoms, diastasis, and pain with intimacy, all without having to leave their home, fighting the insurance system, or guessing their way through healing. Our one on one pelvic floor and core restore program combines expert pelvic floor rehab and strength coaching, giving you a clear, evidence based, and customized plan designed for busy moms who literally don't have time to drive all around town, juggle childcare, or take more time off work. So if you're thinking, yes, I need this, just head to yourpostpartumpt.com backslash book call dash podcast to book a free inquiry call to learn more about what it looks like to work with us one on one and see if it could possibly be a good fit for you. Honestly, this could change everything. And most of our moms find full resolution in just 3 to 6 months working with us one on one. Okay, let's dive back in.
But you asked Jess, like, have I always been like this? I think to a degree, yes. And I think that ingredient of delulu and like almost delusional self-trust is
Mhm.
kind of a prerequisite for breakout success in entrepreneurship. I'm like, study the people who are crushing it in an entrepreneurial setting. One thing they damn sure have in common is that they're willing to believe in their own crazy vision when it makes absolutely no sense on paper. I really do think that that is an ingredient to success. So yes, I've always had that, but for me, the thing that really set it apart was my birth of Jack. And I talk about this on my own podcast, but my birth experience with Jack, it just makes me wanna cry right now. So,
Mhm.
I had a very traumatic first birth with, my daughter, and I knew after that experience, I was like, "That is not my destiny." Like, I know that I have a different birth outcome available to me, but it took so much healing, so much rewiring and repatterning my fears, my nervous system, my physical body. And so I did a lot of healing work actually with an amazing like pelvic therapist. I took Karen Welton's pain-free birth course, which was incredibly
Mhm.
helpful. And I hired her privately as my birth doula and like virtual birth doula. And I had an amazing, I actually, my pelvic floor, I'm just going to shout her out. Her name is Emily Wilson. Her handle is pelvic_wisdom. And she was such an incredible healer facilitator for me in that healing process. And I actually, in our last pelvic PT session, I was like, Emily, I would love for you to be my doula. And she sort of laughed. And I was like, no, seriously, will you come to my birth? And she did. She came. It was her first birth ever. But I just wanna tell that story really quickly because, I mean, this is What About Mom podcast. I'm sure you're gonna get many birth stories on here, but it
Totally.
was actually the experience. So the first birth in the hospital, it was a vaginal birth, but I had, like, nurses holding my knees up to my ears, screaming, "Push," doctor like, I'm crowning, doctors taking phone calls, like, NICU doctors taking phone calls in the room. lights. It was just like everything I didn't want. We were planning for a home birth, ended up having to transfer. Anyway, and I had a 3rd, almost 4th degree tear because she came out in like it was just everything I didn't want. And so I had so much healing to do. And with Jack, that birth happened at home in the
Mhm.
water. And what the craziest part about that birth, he was 10 pounds and 15 ounces, and I didn't push him out. My body experienced FER, so the fetal ejection reflex, where the fundus of the uterus just like expels the baby. And it rewired me from the inside out, Jess. Like I have that element of me. My podcast was called Born to Rise. I'm a former competitive athlete. Like my brand, my expression, my essence was like, if you can dream it, you can do it, go after it. Very like healthy inner masculine.
Mhm.
Um, and that birth was like, hang on a minute. If the biggest work, because don't get me wrong, like that labor was work, but it was pain free up until the very, very end. And it was me working with my body and following this, like literally the deep current of my body's wisdom. And my willpower wasn't required to force the outcome. My willpower was, how devoted can you be to being a guardian for this, like, roaring feminine process to roll through you and like literally birth your child into the world, like
Mhm.
through the gateway of like the unseen to the seen world. Can you devote yourself that much to the power inside of you? And so everything I thought I knew about my power and what was required to accomplish an extraordinary outcome changed from a cellular level through that birth experience. And so I'm like, in a way, that experience really emboldened me to be like, was it terrifying to refund $100,000 and like cut off 80% on top of that, cut off a huge percentage of our MRR? You bet your bottom dollar it was. But I'm like, I also have learned through this somatic experience that there is more going on than just my control. And when I allow that to happen, magic and miracles are waiting on the other side. And so it was about 6 weeks after closing that offer down, getting quiet, that I'll never forget it. I was on my knees. I had like a whole brown paper roll laid out on my office floor. I just like channeled the whole vision for the Millionaire Mother company, our offer suite, the brand. And I like was on the floor writing it all down like I was like, giving birth. And the Millionaire Mother brand was born. And I know, not everyone's story is gonna look like that, but for me, it was truly trusting the deeper whisper and then getting out of the way and being willing to let that come through. I think one of the most extraordinary things that birth gives us is the applied muscle memory of surrender and
Mhm.
also the active labor of showing up to that surrender at the same time. And one of the things, as you very well know, I say all the time is like when we apply those lessons that we have on a cellular somatic level from birth to business, we're at such an advantage.
Yeah. My gosh, and you said it so freaking well, obviously through your birth experience and your birth journey too, but, like, the act of birth and birthing and creating a child and a human into the world is literally the same thing and the same skill set, the same characteristics, the same mindset that you also have to bring to entrepreneurship as a mother as well, and
Mhm.
I know so many of my friends that are also mothers that have had new business ideas come to them after they have become a mother. But
Mhm.
not all of them take action on them. They all have incredible ideas or new ways of thinking because, in my opinion, like mothers were literally created to create and to birth and to rebirth different ideas and package things in different ways. And in my opinion, like mothers are perfect for entrepreneurship. And
Mhm.
so I think that there is something so beautiful with the connection of the birth process to the same applying the same principles, the same characteristics, the same fear of the unknown to entrepreneurship as well. but not everyone takes action. I guess what would you say to someone who maybe has this incredible idea that really could bring so many good things to the world, to other people, be of service in certain ways? What would you say to them to, like, get them over that hump? You're so good at speaking into this in the moment, so I'd love for you to speak into that as, like, they have this idea, they have this thought, they wanna birth it into the world, but, like, something is blocking them.
Mm. Yes. Okay. So I think that what happens at the breakdown for a lot of these women is a embedded, almost like calcified old identity
Mm,
that is dampering and kind of holding down this new almost like as you're speaking, Jess, I feel this like generative, almost this wellspring type energy, this fountain from within that's pouring up. And it's so true. Like after, while we're pregnant, after the birth portal, that we have literally, I mean, it's this isn't just like energetic woo woo. Like a baby comes from your second chakra, your sacral chakra. You open up, 500 times your normal freaking diameter to birth a child into the world. No matter how you do it, whether it's a C-section or a vaginal birth, doesn't matter. But you are in this wildly generative phase. So it's so true that women are having these downloads, our brain chemistry changes, our intuition is on fire. Um, and I think that the breakdown for women who like have those ideas, on the surface, we might tell ourselves, "Oh, I'm busy. It's not the season for that. I'm tired.
mhm,
I'm sleep deprived." And all of that is true. And also, like, own what you want. If you're like having amazing ideas and you just don't want to take action on them, then make that choice, decide that it's not the season and no worries, like move on. But if you are somebody who's like, "Oh my gosh, I just don't know what to do with this." So it feels easier to tell myself that quote unquote it's not the season when really maybe it is the season, but I'm just freaking terrified of what
mhm,
this looks like. Um those are the women that I want to speak to in this. And when I talk about this calcified old identity, one of the things that I think motherhood causes us to reckon with is meeting a newer version of ourself, and inherently, when we become a mother, our place in, I don't wanna say the pecking order, but our place in the timeline, if you will, of our lineage changes. We go from, I'm just kinda living my life doing my thing to, "Whoa, hold on a minute. I am sort of the center point between where I've come from and my descendants." And so it brings up an opportunity to ask ourselves, "What am I passing on to my kids?"
mhm,
And I think for a lot of women, the story of, "Well, we don't come from a line of entrepreneurs," or like, "People like us don't create money like that." All of these belonging beliefs, and belonging is what, I mean, Brene Brown, there's so many people who have incredible research and data on this, but that primal wiring to want to belong is so strong. And I think for many mothers who are finding themselves, maybe they've never run a business before. I work with a ton of women who have very successful corporate careers. And as we know, corporate America is not a place for moms. It's not to say that moms can't find a place in it, but moms raising young children, I mean, 2 freaking weeks of paid vacation a year, like it's not the place that you wanna be. So a lot of my community are women who have incredibly successful careers who are like, "I don't wanna just give the best of me to, like, this company that doesn't care about me at all. I wanna turn that skill set into a coaching business, a consulting business. I wanna start my own thing." There is a fundamental identity shift. Number 1, we feel guilty because we're breaking the pecking order. We're no longer pouring those gifts into a corporation that doesn't care about us. We're doing something different with it. So there's all this like internal liberation that has to happen to believe we're worthy of listening to those creative nudges and to believe that we have what it takes. And
mm,
so I would say, if you're feeling those creative nudges, get inside of a room, inside of a space, in relationships with other women, because that primal belonging thing is such a strong invisible impetus for everything that we do. And if you are only calibrating to like former work colleagues or family of origin or societal messages at large that say like postpartum is the time for like just nesting with your kids and ignore any, and like a good mom is going to sacrifice her ambition or give up her ambition to do the most important thing. It's going to feel really hard for you to break order, if you will, break the ranks and do your own thing. But if you're surrounded by other women who are like number one devoted to being present mothers, and they're unapologetically following their ambition, and they're finding new creative ways to fuel their passions and, generate prosperity for their family, like those rooms exist. That's the entire, millionaire mother community. This podcast gives such a platform for women who are interested in holding those both worlds. And I would just say, like, find a different circle and start rewiring your sense of what you think you're capable of.
Yes. Oh my God. 100%. I can attest to like surrounding yourself around the community that gets it, because you will just be fighting an uphill battle if you continue to place yourselves in communities or coaching programs or circles that they just don't get it. They don't understand it. And it's no fault of their own. Oftentimes they're just not a mother, right? They're just not
100.
in that space. And so it's not their fault. They just don't know how to meet you. They don't know how to give you birth references about all of the pressure that's being applied in the birth canal. They just don't know how to, hold the dance between talking about Elsa on a coaching call and then diving straight into the offer specifics. It's like it's this, and I think is so important to hold yourself in that community, surrounding yourselves, holding that vision so tight, because who is going to best support you in that vision? Other mothers will.
Mhm.
Right. And I think that's another piece that, you've alluded on so great, is like the collaboration, the networking, this being in that small circle of women and mothers who just get it.
Mhm.
Um, I'm also so the other things that were coming up for me as you were talking, things that I personally had to work through is this belief system of like, why me? It's either I'm too much or can't not enough, right? Like this too much or not enoughness. And you spoke to the worthiness piece, which I think is really crucial and important. I also feel like, for me, I struggled early on allowing myself to take up big space. And I think that just kept me playing small and like hiding. And it's like, oh, yeah, I have this business. Oh, yeah, I help moms, but I'm a present mother and I'm with my kids. Oh, then don't worry, they're not in full time daycare. It's like trying to like, appease all of the things that I was most afraid to just like speak out loud and be like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm a total CEO, badass mom that runs a very successful business that actually serves other moms too, and just fully owning that. And that really held me back for a long period of time too. Did you ever struggle with that yourself, or did you have, obviously women in your circle, mothers that you coach, I'm sure do as well.
Oh, 100%. And I feel like, for me, it was my closest friends and like business sisters that I've been with for years now will tell you this. Like, the worthiness piece, I can honestly say no. For whatever reason, I feel like I was bestowed with like the worthiness internal barometer of like a rich white man or something. I'm just like, no, I know that I'm worthy. Like, I know I'm worthy of making great money. I know I'm worthy of taking up space. That has never been a personal struggle of mine. But the guilt piece of, um, or the questioning of, "Oh, is time away from my kid gonna end up hurting them or whatever?" Like, of course, I've felt that before. It's not something I feel every single day, but there are certainly moments, whether it's, going away. I mean, even just like day to day, even right before this, I was like a couple minutes late to this call. Let's just normalize that, mamas. But I was a couple minutes late to this call because Jack, my middle, was, like, transitioning after breakfast, and he's like, "Mom, play with me, give me one more roughhouse," and so I'm like, "Okay, I can be perfectly on time for this call, or I can have this, like, connection moment with my kid," and then he cries when I come in and close the door, and, not every transition to, like, coming to these work engagements when you work from home and are being a mom is smooth, and so there's totally moments, even on this call with my, like, padded headphones, that I can hear him in the other room, and I'm like, "Oh, my heart." But that is the dance. So, absolutely, there are those moments that I feel the kind of twinge, and I think about what I would be sacrificing. I don't even know if this is your question, but I'm answering something else. Like, what I would be sacrificing on the other side of ignoring, like, how pumped I am to get to come in here and have this conversation with you. Sure, I might be sitting on the ground playing Lego or, like, roughhousing, but a part of me would be being resentful of my child. A part of me would be wanting to be somewhere else. And all of the research and all of the data shows us that 15 minutes, and I spend more than that with my child, each kid each day in the collective, that is so much more meaningful for them from an attachment development, healthy, secure attachment standpoint than being with them all day for the sake of being a good mom, but feeling secretly resentful, feeling like my ambition, my body of work, my creation and expression outside of motherhood was getting sacrificed in order to be a good mom. And so whenever I have those human moments, I hold space for and mother myself. But I also know, like, me being here and being away from my kids right now is actually means that when I'm with them, I am so much more topped up. I am they're getting the best of me because 'cause they're getting the fully expressed, fully alive version of me, not the one who's modeling that being a quote unquote good mom is being a martyr.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I feel the exact same. Like, when I get to live in my highest purpose and my soul's calling, and I'm giving and I'm serving and I'm genuinely loving the work that I do, like, I show up as such a better mom because I am living in what I feel like is my highest calling and my highest soul purpose. And it kind of circles back again to, like, what do you actually want? Like, you can do a lot of different things, but asking yourself, getting quiet, really sitting with those desires, those ambitions, those needs and wants, and like really leaning in and going for that. Because, yeah, when we are our best selves, we can give our best selves to our kids. And I think
100.
that's such an important thing versus like, you're home all day and maybe you like freaking hate it. There's that. Or you could be at a corporate job and also freaking hate that. And so a happy and healthy mom that feels fulfilled is like the best thing that we can give our children and show our children. Not even to get woo, but like our energetics, our frequency of being
Oh,
in that space with our kids is so crucial.
1,000,000%, and it's not even woo at all. Like, the energetic tenor of our home, we are really like the sound bowl of our home, and if we are putting out a frequency of resentment or, it's so funny, and I mean, I feel like you get this as well because, Conrad, how old's Conrad now? Is he
He's
5?
5, he'll be 6 in August.
Okay, so Ella is 4.5, she's gonna be 5 in October, and literally this morning, I was saying to Toby on my this is just, like, such a silly example, but, like, on my Explore page, for whatever reason, there was this reel about a woman showing that she's, like, 90 steps away from her house is 90 steps away from her parents' house, and it just I unexpectedly just, like, burst into tears when I saw it because we're in Australia and thinking about moving here more full time and, missing my family, whatever. And so that I had that experience by myself. I was upstairs in the kitchen telling Toby about that. Ello couldn't see my face. She just heard the tone of my voice and she was like, "Mommy, what's wrong? Are you sad, Mom?" And so I just share that because I'm like, frequency is absolutely real. And they pick up on our feelings and our emotions, even if they're not reading our facial expressions, they can just sense it. Kids are so freaking smart. And so, if that was just like the tone of my voice talking about the emotional impact of an Instagram reel, if I'm living day to day, frustrated, annoyed, they are reading our body language. They are reading the tone of our voice. They are reading our intonation, our huffing, our, whatever. And so and again, I'm not painting that picture, like, I think there are mothers who, motherhood is hard, entrepreneurship is hard, they're also both amazing. There are women who choose, like, I am just gonna throw myself completely into being the primary caretaker of my children, the homemaker of my home. That is what feels like that is my truest expression of my creative gifts and passions. So I just wanna say, like, if that is you, bless. That is amazing. I love that. What I am describing is for the woman who is like feels like part of her wants that, but there is another part and she doesn't know how to engage with that other part. That is the woman I'm speaking to, because I do know some quote unquote stay-at-home moms. I don't like that term, but some women who devote themselves full time to caretaking and homemaking, and they are very fulfilled by that. But I also know way more moms who feel like they should want that, but a part of them also wants more. And there's all this guilt of like, I'm not being a good XYZ. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's just because you're not seeing a model where you can embrace the part of you that loves being barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen and making food from scratch, and also running a super impactful, profitable business. Because I'm like, that's literally me. I love being barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I love cooking with my kids. I love being a hands-on mom. And I've got a big mission in the world that asks me to be out here also. And so that's the arena that I choose to play in.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you reiterated that too. Is like, yeah, we're not saying there's any right or wrong, but what we are saying is like make sure that you're tapped into like what that soul purpose is for you and
Yes.
making sure that you are living in your highest truth. And as long as you are, then that's what like bless. Like we love you. And also it might just be the model. It might just be the limiting beliefs. It might just be the mindset. It might just be the fact that you feel like you can't or you shouldn't, the guilt piece coming up. It could just be all of those, and so sit with that you a little longer to really, really get down deeper because I went back and forth too as I continued to grow my company and my business. I started having those feelings like, "Oh my god, should I be growing the company? Should I be serving this many people? Like, should my mission be this big? Should I be this ambitious? Maybe I should just follow suit with whatever all of the women and mothers in my generation did, which was majority of them stayed home and supported maybe businesses, but the primary role for them was a stay-at-home mom. And so for me to not follow suit in that like was a really big wrecking ball that I had to overcome. And I think a lot of women and mothers just follow suit if they feel like that's what they have to do, but just continuing to come back to leaning into like what is my soul's highest and calling and purpose? And like making sure you're listening to that and following your intuition and living that out boldly. Like that is the ticket that we are talking about
100%.
right here.
hundred
The
percent.
and the other thing too that I feel like I want to segue into this is like you are the earning partner if of the family. Like you are the breadwinner. Let's just call it what it is. Like, and that is not normal in our current day-to-day society and definitely not in generations before. So how have you guys navigated that maybe as a couple, but also like your belief systems, your mindset around that as well, of really just owning that and continuing to build the mission and fuel the mission forward and yeah, that money mindset piece, I would love for you to share your experience with that.
Oh my god, I love this question. You're so good at this, Jess. This is so good. I'm like, how many hours do we have? Because this is like a whole fucking chapter. Okay, so um yes, I am the breadwinner in the family. Toby also has a business that generates six figures per year. So he's definitely generating over there. But the way that okay, so here's what I want to say about this. Provision in a relationship, we're told that the masculine, when a man becomes a husband or whatever, his primary role is to be the provider of the family. Um, in many ways, there are many like aspects of our relationship where I don't wanna say traditional, but for lack of a better term, traditional, like, gender norms, like, I love it when Toby holds the door for me. I love it when he pays for date night dinner. I love being led by my man, and I think there's this, like, really common, misconstruing that happens of, like, "Oh, if it's the female breadwinner, I'm over here like some dominatrix, like, whipping his ass, being the boss of my home." That is just not the case. I'm, like, so not interested in that, and frankly, that has been one of the core areas for me, and I think of a lot of ambitious women. I have this conversation all of the time with my breadwinning mom, clients, colleagues, friends. It's like business requires us, and even motherhood. This is actually like a little interesting nuance to add in here, but there are many aspects of running a company and also many aspects of mothering young children in particular that ask us to be in our inner masculine faculty. Like, don't run into the street, don't put your hand on the stove. We're not just like talking about feelings and being in this like process oriented thing. We're literally like the bumpers, making sure that our freaking young humans don't die. And when we're in our companies, we're making structural decisions and literally holding space. And when we think about just from an energetics and polarity standpoint, the masculine and the feminine, no matter your gender expression, we all have both of these inside of us. But what I'm saying is, our companies, running our companies and being a mom to young children, often we need both, but often have us leaning, I would say more prevalently towards like the masculine containment holding principle rather than just the feminine flow creativity principle. Where I think marriages and relationships get into trouble is when we as women don't know where the off switch is when it comes to being in our relationship. And so we're taking the significance of being the boss and being the CEO and having our young people listen to us and trying to bring that, or not even trying, but unknowingly bringing that into our relating dynamic and wondering why, the polarity is off, the intimacy is off, whatever. For me, and I am, like, not ashamed to say this, as an Enneagram 3, as a go-getter, this has been, like, my work is to learn when to just, like, shut up and be a passenger princess because I'm very comfortable in the driver's seat. And yet it's been such a huge thing, and so the way that this, like, weaves into, the breadwinning, who's making the money, I think it is so freaking important to acknowledge for women who are partnered with a man who are and the woman is the breadwinner, acknowledging all of the provision, activity, and contribution that our man is making to the family that is not just in the form of financial, breadwinning. And I think that this antiquated idea, like, I would not call myself a feminist. Like, there are many parts of the feminist movement that I'm profoundly grateful for that I think are so important. But I also love men and I love, I have 2 sons. I'm really interested in raising noble masculine men. And I think that honoring the masculine is so important in order to do that. And so um the vision and the space holding, like the term, I'm such a nerd for some good etymology, provision comes from the Latin providere, which literally means to look forward at a vision. So this idea of providing is being able to hold the picture, plan for it, and Toby does that in our family way more than I do, to like a degree. I mean, he like the life administration, the day-to-day holding, our financial, I'm like a big part of our dynamic is like I make the majority of the money, he manages it and grows it. And it's such an incredible combination. And I think when we approach a relationship from like, or I even hear clients like, "I'm afraid to make more than my man because I don't want him to feel emasculated." I'm like, there needs to be a conversation there about what the breakdown of roles is and also how each person is sourcing significance. Like, now we operate as a team, and if I am generating more money, it's like I am not using that as leverage of being more powerful than him. I am literally just channeling more energy for him to then be able to do his thing. And I am appreciating all of the contribution he's making that isn't necessarily in the form of just income, but the way that he holds the space for all of us. And so, I mean, there's just so many layers there, but those are some of the things that come to mind, like, off the top of my head.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys have really worked together so well to communicate too. I think like this open communication of like, I'm feeling this way and you're doing that. And that the word provision keeps coming up, like, as you say it, and I think it's such a perfect word for holding that symbiotic, like, this is a
Yes.
relationship. This is not a you versus me. This is, like, the household's finances, and let's hold that vision together about how we're gonna multiply, how we're gonna create, how we're gonna share, how we're gonna donate, how we're gonna utilize it, and, like, that's the exciting part too, is, like, who cares who makes it, right?
100. I mean, like, think about this is such a bad analogy because it's not, like, numerically correct, but, like, imagine the absurdity of on a soccer team, the goalie and the forward arguing about whose role is more important. "Well, without me, you wouldn't score any goal. Well, without me, all the goal," and it's like, "Yo," and obviously there's more players on the team. Like, both of these roles are essential. Can we not like, it's so absurd to think about which one is more important. We are so much freer and more leveraged when we recognize that each of these roles is contributing something so massive to the team. And having that team mindset, that I feel like has been such a quantum unlock for us.
Yeah, absolutely, I can imagine so, and same for my husband as well, like, really
So
those
great.
open lines of communication, that same team, um, belief system and mindset is huge, but I loved hearing you talk all about that, and I'm sure it will land so well for so many of our mamas too listening. But yes, oh my gosh, Kate, it's been so amazing having you on here. I would absolutely love our moms that are listening to this or soon to be moms. Maybe they're entrepreneurs now, or maybe they're wannabe entrepreneurs. Like, who like who are you serving at this time, and like how can they connect with you further to learn more about you and possibly getting support with you?
Oh, thank you, Jess. Yeah, come over and listen to the Millionaire Mother podcast. You can find me on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. I'm in my DMs. Would love to hear your biggest takeaway from this episode. So feel free to shoot me a DM. I'm just at the Millionaire Mother. You can also find me on my website, themillionairemother.com. And yeah, my community is filled with moms of all walks, shapes, seasons, from, pre-conception to 8 plus kids, and every season and stage of entrepreneurship, from I'm thinking of starting my own business to I'm already running a seven-figure company. But there is something about my motherhood experience that is causing me to want to shift, pivot, change gears, and own a new layer of my ambition and to find a way to skillfully hold both worlds. So if any of that is you, come say hi. I would just so love to connect with you.
Amazing, amazing. And of course, I'll leave all of those links for you guys as well in the show notes. But please reach out, obviously, to cater myself if we can do anything for you in this space. We are so grateful that you tuned in, and we'll catch you next time.